So I got my friend's 1999 Toyota Corolla here, and it won't start for her. And we're pretty sure it's not the battery, even though the battery is old. But even with jumper cables connected and being on the charge for 8 hours, like the battery should be good. And it's got new connectors on here and stuff like that, so I don't think it's just corroded connections. I think it's actually the starter itself. It'll just sit there and click when you go to start it, but the starter is right here on top, so I think it's going to be really easy to change out. Of course, the very first thing we'll want to do is disconnect the negative battery cable. Now it looks like there's just a bolt there and up here that holds the starter on. This one on the back is a little bit tricky to get to, but I've had worse. Looks like both of these bolts here are 14mm. And now that I got those two bolts out, looks like the starter just kind of take a little screwdriver here, it pops right out. I'm having a little bit of trouble actually getting the starter. The starter's out of the engine kind of, but it's kind of hitting the air box over there, like the intake air box, and doesn't really want to come out. I'm going to go ahead and I took this boot off here, and then that's where the positive lead from the battery connects. I'm going to go ahead and unhook that. Looks like it's just a 12mm. It's coming off pretty easy. So once I got that nut off there to connect the positive battery cable, I was able to maneuver it a lot more, and I was able to get the gear out of the engine, or out of the transmission. Now before I take this all the way out of here, I've still got my little wire that comes from my key, or my ignition. And it's on a connector here. I'm just going to use I think I'll use my needle nose pliers. I got to squeeze that little deal there to pull the connector out. Well, I found out that my needle nose pliers didn't really fit in there, but what I did do is I took my screwdriver here, and the little piece that needed to be pressed down on was right here. I just pushed down with my screwdriver and then pushed out at the same time, and it popped right out. So now I'm going to take this to the parts store, and they're going to test it for me for free just to make sure it's bad, but I'm pretty sure it is. And then go buy a new one. So since the old starter wouldn't start even with a jump start or a full charge on the battery, I pretty much assumed it was the starter. Either that or a corroded cable down there, but the auto parts store confirmed that it was the starter bad, so I'm going to go ahead and put this new one in. Now the new starter's in, but before I put it completely in, I wanted to hook up that positive terminal there, because it's a lot easier to put it in now than when it's completely installed. So it's important to get this nut on here as tight as you can, but at the same time, if it's too tight, it'll break off, and I've done that before, and it's not fun. And now I'm just going to plug in that other little wire there too. Plugs right in, no problem. And go ahead and install these two bolts that hold it in. One there, back down there, and the one here. So now the starter's all in, and we'll go ahead and hook these battery cables back up. I like the way the car sounds.